Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine Fry, and I'm the CEO and president of Mediafy Communications Group. And today I am hosting my podcast, Chat with Kat, and I have the honor of having Randy Compton here with me. And he has a business called Compton Surveying, and we are shining a light on his local business. It is located in Chickamauga, Georgia, and I have known Randy Compton now for at least more than 10 years. At least 10 years. So, Randy, all right. So you have a surveying business, and I've known this for many years, but can you tell our listeners here, what exactly does a surveyor do?
Well, as we discussed several times when you were writing my website, and I think you were impressed the more you looked into it, see how far it went back, all the way back to the Egyptians when they were doing it, because they did it for measuring fields and stuff, with the Nile flood. But the majority of surveyors around here do boundary surveys. We do a lot
boundary surveys.
Doing boundary surveys. We do a lot of subdivisions. We work with engineers and with architects, doing topographical surveys. Where we show all the contours on the map. Mm-hmm. Okay, part of that is for designing where the sediment erosion control goes, designing for the grade of the road, designing for how you're going to design it, the paths for the houses are going to be built, or if it is a commercial site where they're going to be built, so that you can get the dirt hopefully will balance out. They can do that, so you don't have to bring dirt in. It's very expensive. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't.
Right.
But most of the work that I do and the guys I know is property surveys.
Property surveys
where people need the corner set. They need some lines staked, putting up a fence.
Okay.
If there's this to keep something in or keep something out.
Okay.
Or there's an argument over the line, so they want it staked so that their neighbor knows where the line is.
And you settle that argument.
I don't know that I settle that argument. We stake it because that line could cause more of an argument. Sometimes if they disagree with it.
Okay.
So sometimes it does settle it because they don't know. Then when you stake it, they may like it, and they may not like it. Sometimes your client doesn't like it because your client thought it was further over than what it was.
And you clarified, no, it's not.
That's right, because sometimes we'll find the corners. We just set them. They didn't know where they were. We found them with a metal detector, and we located them via GPS, global positioning or conventional, and they check. We've surveyed the property, the distance checks between them. They check to the other corners. But they still want to argue that they're not right.
So if they're still arguing after you, the surveyor, have indicated this is where the lines are, what do they do at that point?
Well, at that point, if it's a neighbor disagrees with my survey, they can hire their surveyor. Okay, so their surveyor comes in, we either agree or disagree. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've surveyed within my box, maybe went outside the box a little bit, depending on what kind of evidence I found on the ground. Well, that deed for the adjoining one begins somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So that surveyor started working his way back. So now you've got some kind of overlap or gap in between that based on the evidence. Mm-hmm. Now, the deeds may not say that. The deeds may have it, the lines touching up against each other. And maybe even state it in the deed. But the monumentation on the ground
doesn't indicate that.
It doesn't indicate that.
So does that mean the deed was inaccurate?
It doesn't mean the deed was not accurate. It just means that, several things can take place. Okay, so you drive up an iron pin. Surveyor drives up an iron pin. 99.9% of the time is correct. But surveyors are human. They make mistakes. They can turn around wrong angles or do something. Even with GPS, can be off a little bit. It can be set wrong.
Sure.
Or else you can set a corner. Right? So you have set a corner out there. They don't like that corner.
I
see.
So
when you leave, they adjust that corner accordingly. Okay. So the issues that we will have, surveyors, when we set iron pins in the ground, we have a rebar cap, plastic rebar cap, and it's got our company name and our license number on it.
Ah, interesting.
So now here it
It's all
is.
very official.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here it is. So Catherine's surveying company is out here surveying beside mine. Catherine finds one of my iron pins, calls me and said, Randy, this is not checking. You got a mistake here. So I go out there and check it and see if I got a mistake. It's like,
No, there's no mistake.
know. You know, whether that's my iron pin, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't check for my iron pin I set down here. So someone we made a mistake on it, which very seldom do we make
Right.
the larger mistakes that they find right there, or else someone's pulled it up and moved it to where they wanted.
Goodness, have you seen that happen before?
Oh, yes, that happened. I'll tell you a story. When I first started surveying in 1980, talking with the surveyor. He was an engineer and a surveyor. Didn't do that much engineering. So he said he had a guy call him. He said, I know where all the markers are. I just need you to check them. He said, okay, well, don't lose them. So I got there that evening. He pulled every single one of them up, brought them in the house. He said, why did you do that? He said, well, you told me not to lose them.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, whether or not he was jerking his 21-year-old's leg or not, I don't know. But he liked telling that story.
That's quite the story.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, so how long have you been a surveyor?
I started surveying in 1980.
Okay, and you were working for a company you said in...
Well, I worked for one up in Jasper. I started in Lafayette for about a year. And then one up in Jasper for about 2.5 years. And in 83, I went to work with a company in Dalton.
Dalton, right.
Stayed there for 10 years. But got my license when I was with them, then started my business. So I've been in business since 93.
Since 93,
Yes.
Okay. And your business is in Chickamauga, Georgia.
Yes.
Okay. So what are the professional certifications that a surveyor must have?
Okay, you've got to have 15 to 20 hours of school. That can be in trig 2 and surveying classes.
So there's a lot of math.
There is a lot of math. We don't use it like we used to when I started, because in the field we would calculate a slope distance. So we're pulling a chain. When I started, we didn't have the equipment that we have now that measures your distance out and gives you that horizontal distance. Every measurement you took was a slope distance. So you could take, depending on what your vertical angle was, you could take the sine or cosine of that, and actually took the sine of it, and you could figure what your horizontal distance is on it. Because when you could be going down a steep slope. Okay, the deed says it is 1,000 feet. Okay, if you use that slope distance, you're going to reach 1,000 feet a lot quicker if you're on something steep. So you have to calculate the horizontal distance.
Okay.
And that will take you out a little further to get you to your corner. So we used to do that in our field book because we kept notes in the field book. So we would calculate our slope distance, use that trig function to calculate that. That way we would know how close we were to it. And then as it started advancing, calculators got to where you could collect data in that. You could put it in a calculator and you could inverse. Tell, okay, I want to know this is 0.30 and I've already calculated that pointer is that corner, and that corner is 0.50. So how far am I from 0.30 to 0.50? And it would tell you that, what that distance was. Now, sometimes you had to calculate the angle. Take this my bearing back to to 0.29.
Yeah.
So this is my angle. So then you return the angle. Nowadays, you sit there, hold it in your hand.
Put it in your hand.
So it's all digital now. Now I'm looking at it in my hand, and I can see the vegetation. I can toggle it to where I can see where my GPS equipment is on that site right there, on it, and I can see where I'm located. So it's advanced, to that point.
Wow. Okay. So as a surveyor, I know that you have come across some really challenging situations. Can you tell me about perhaps one that was really challenging?
Challenging physically, or challenging dealing with an angry adjoining property owner? because I've been run off, cussed and run off. I've been threatened be shot if I didn't if I didn't get off. So I'll stay nice and I'll leave.
And you leave?
You don't have to tell me twice.
How about one that was perhaps mentally challenging?
Mentally challenging is usually most of the time in the office.
Okay.
To where the deed says it begins at Randy and Catherine's, Randy Compton's eastern corner, Catherine's western corner.
Okay.
Where is that corner?
Where is that corner?
Yeah.
So you have to determine that corner.
We have to determine that. Then it runs in a northerly direction. Okay. Now we're running northerly, Catherine. That could be northwest. That could be northeast. But we're running in a northerly direction.
Northerly.
Are we going to run northwest or are we going to run northeast? Okay. And we're running along Catherine's line. Well, where is Catherine's line?
Uh-huh.
Now that's challenging in the field because you really don't know what direction that you're going.
You don't know what the people were thinking when they wrote this. You have to almost get in their heads.
Oh. And here's a situation. Okay. So they're saying, okay, this northeast 20 degrees for 2,000 feet. Okay, somebody messed up. They should have been northwest. So now you're taking off in a northeast direction.
You're going in the wrong direction.
You're going in the wrong direction. You know, and you can't find anything when you get there. So you start doing your calculations and you back it up. You say, oh, this is supposed to be going northwest.
Oh.
So then you back it up. So what you do at that point, you go ahead and calculate that point, right?
Yeah.
So then you just traverse over there to that northwest corner would be at, or northeast, whatever direction that you went to try to find that corner. So yeah, sometimes in the deeds can be challenging. Story I like to tell: back when I was with the engineering company, we were doing the design work for GDOT for the widening of Highway 27 there between Carrollton and Bremen.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's a rainy day. Well, I was on salary, so like most of the crew chiefs, I had to work. So they sent me down to Carrollton to pull deeds. So here I am with a deed. Okay, so it began on Highway 27. Then it went back to the turnip patch.
The turnip patch.
The turnip patch. Now it's all woods now.
So you don't know where the turnip patch
I don't know
was?
where the turnip patch is.
There's no turnip patch there now.
No. Okay, then it went northeast to where the old mule sow was buried.
Oh.
Okay, nobody knows where that mule was buried. It's all wood now. Yeah, it's all wooded. So you get to those right there that's challenging in the field. It's challenging if you got to. Okay, so you've hired me to do it. So they passed that deed down. That deed is from 1917. So you just bought that property with that right there.
Wow.
And they actually insured it. Somebody insured that title. Insured that title with that description. Okay, so now you want to know where the corners are, right? I don't know where to start. Hopefully we get out there and we got an adjoining deed that has a good description.
Yeah.
It's calling for something. Or we get out there and neighbors say, I don't really know. I've always told the axle right there was the corner. Well, that kind of looks like it would be the corner. So that gives you a place to start. Then at that point, you can start taking off and hopefully you'll find something. That's what we always hope for, that we'll find some kind of monumentation of that corner in the ground that's not disputed.
Have you ever come across a situation that you just couldn't figure it out? It was just too difficult?
I had one in 2012 up on Lookout Mountain. All the deeds called for everybody's line. So I said, okay, I got to go outside the box. Go outside the box. Their deeds called for everybody's line.
Yeah.
Everybody, and there was no distances. They all called for somebody else's line. So I told that gentleman, because we had just done a survey for him, and he said, God, y'all found those corners. Y'all did good. I got one up on the mountain I need you to do. I called him up. I said, I can't do that.
So it's just too hard.
Nobody knew where the corners were.
Ah.
They didn't know where. They didn't care. I mean, these were neighbors like the old days. They didn't really care. They were neighbors, and most of them probably didn't even want to know, where they were, because they were just neighbors. And they took care of each other. One may mow over, one may mow that way.
Yeah,
they didn't care. But you get those people that way. I did a survey for a gentleman, and he was just kind of a little busybody, and he called me, Randy, he he's mowing over here in my yard. I said, well, I can't remember his last name's Green. I said, you know, you bought that from a lady that passed away. Okay. He probably mowed out there for her because she was an elderly woman.
Sure.
All right. So I said, that's probably all that he's doing. He's an elderly gentleman. He's super nice. What do I need to do, Randy? What do I need to do? I said, go carry him a glass of tea.
Yeah.
So
be neighborly.
He called back
Yeah.
about 30 minutes. He came back. Randy, I said, what? He said, I carried him a glass of tea. I said, what? He said, you all right? He said, he used to mow it for us. So he said, he just came down. So he just thought he'd mow it right there for me. I said, did you thank him? Yeah. I thanked
Very
him.
nice.
Gave him a glass of tea. I said, see there, calm down. Communication. Just talk to him. You didn't have to call me. You should have right up there and talk to him. You knew he was a nice guy. Yeah, I got to calm down.
So when you're out doing this surveying work, I know you touched upon this a little bit, but what are the tools that you use out in the field?
Okay. Nowadays we use GPS. GPS keeps getting better and better as far as getting to the woods.
Okay.
Now, because now we're at summertime, we got the leaves on the trees. So that affects us quite a bit.
Sure.
Once the leaves are off the trees, because there's so many satellites up there now, we can get into the woods. Now, when we get in the woods, we may have to sit there for a little while and let it calculate it. All those satellites and all the radio link and all that stuff get together and settle down.
Okay.
Because you're getting a lot of data coming in there. So you have to let it settle down to where you got a good fix on it.
Yeah.
And then do it. But, starting out, I pulled 200-foot chain, metal chain.
Oh.
And he went 200 feet. I was telling my helper today, works for my crew chief, how nowadays when we're using this conventional, that you got electronic. Okay, we can set up on this ridge and we can shoot across to the other ridge, see right across it. Back in the day, when you pull a chain, you had to pull. Okay, so you're rolling over a ridge, you might not go but 70 feet, and you had to set a point.
Oh.
Because you would roll over, you couldn't see.
Right.
And it was 300 feet over there. You had a 200-foot chain, and you had all those limbs in the way, so you couldn't do it. So you had to roll all over that ridge, go through that hollow, go up the hill, roll over it. She said, God, you could have 10 shots in there. I said, yeah.
Oh, wow.
You could. Whereas nowadays with GPS and with electronic, you can get one distance across there. So it speeds it up, gives greater accuracy.
So that's the biggest tool.
That is
GPS.
the biggest tool right there, because every time you set up with the instrument, every time there's error.
Okay.
It might be great, it might be very small. But if you have small errors, in this shot, small error in this one, small error, it adds up, time you get back to your point of beginning, where you started from, it adds up. So by cutting down the amount of times that you set up, it creates a better accuracy. I would say a greater precision, because there's a difference between accuracy and precision,
Sure.
So it creates a better precision.
Are you also using a calculator out in the field?
No, our data collectors goes Bluetooth. So it's sitting here. So we're sitting here. They call it we always call them data collectors, but they don't call them that now. Okay, it's Bluetooth. So I got a GPS unit there, and I've got my data collector. Okay?
Yeah.
So, there's a calculator in there right there. If you want to use it, you just go calculator. So I push it in there.
Okay.
But what we got now, it collected data, and it's collected data on state plane coordinates. Okay, so I just gathered state plane coordinate on this axle right here. So I got over here, I collected a state plane coordinate on this cap rebar over here. Okay, so now I want to know, what is that distance between that? Okay, so I go, that's point number 100 up there, and I want to go to point 101. It tells me my bearing distance. Okay, what does my deed say? Okay, well, that's pretty close to my deed, or that's way off my deed. So that must not be the corner I'm looking for, because the bearing is off also. Right. So you get quicker checks, in doing it. The precision gets better. Of course, it's like most stuff. My ex-brother-in-law would say, it was a computer whiz, junk in, junk out.
Yes.
You put junk in, you're going to get junk back out. Even with GPS, you have to take your time with that, because if the data is dancing around in there with the satellites, and the radio link is struggling right there, you might not get a good coordinate on that point.
I see.
So you have to be careful with that. So everybody thinks, oh, you use GPS, it's,
Of course, it's going to be 100% accurate. Done by GPS, yes.
But see, there's a difference between precision and accuracy. Okay, you've got this axle here, and you got this pipe over here. Okay, so those two are called for in the deed.
Huh.
The axle's called for in the deed, and that pipe's called for in the deed. That's what you're going to hold. That's the intent was to sell to those. Okay, so I can precisely measure an inaccurate corner.
Huh.
Because I can use that GPS and it's buzzing that day. All right, it's buzzing. It's collecting everything down to the nearest thousandths. But if that is not, if that is not the corner, then I have precisely located the wrong corner.
Oh.
So I have set precisely set an inaccurate corner. So you got accuracy and you got precision.
Right.
So, and they conflict sometimes, and sometimes they work together.
So before GPS, when did you start using GPS out in the field?
GPS, I started back in around 87 or 88, and they had these boxes. Trimble had these boxes that weighed about 50 pounds. All right, and then you had a laptop computer.
Okay. Right. State of the art at the time.
State of the art.
1987.
You had an antenna about this big around, like a spaceship.
Yeah.
So right there on it. And
I'm sure it was huge.
Yeah, it was huge. So you sat there and you only had 8 hours that you could even GPS.
Oh.
There wasn't that many satellites up.
Oh.
So you had to be able to get at least 3 satellites to create that triangle.
Okay.
Okay. At times we could get 5. When we had 5 satellites, we didn't have to sit on that point as long.
Okay.
On it because we get more data coming from it.
Yeah.
But within that 8-hour window, you couldn't get 3 satellites anymore. You're down to 2. So you had to stop.
You have to come back the next day and pick it up again.
The night in the morning. In the wintertime, it was at nighttime. So you was out there freezing at nighttime. In the summertime, they were up. So you were GPSing in the summertime. Of course, because it's amazing talking to people in that technology. Because he said, one day, boys, you're going to be holding that GPS in your hand right here.
Yeah.
And say, all right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, all right, Dr. Collins. Yeah, all right, Dr. Collins.
Right.
But
and here we are. That's what we're doing now. Okay, so before 1987, before GPS, because I know you said you've been doing this since 1980, what were you doing from 80 to 87? Before GPS, what were the tools?
We were pulling a 200-foot chain with a transit or with a theodolite. When I left that company in 83, then I started working with electronic distance meters.
Okay.
So we had a TopCon, they call it the guppy. It looked like a guppy, and you point it at a prism, and it would reflect back.
Oh.
And then you'd have to turn this little thing. You'd have a little thing coming across here, a little light coming across. You had to turn it till that light stopped. When that light stopped, it would measure the distance. So then they went from the guppy to the GTS-2.
GTS-2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then, that's what TopCon called it. You had other companies out there that had different names. Yeah. Then you could point it at it. Okay. But it gave you the slope distance, not the horizontal distance. And then we moved up to the TopCon 3. Okay. Well, the TopCon 3 gave us the horizontal distance. So we no longer had to record the vertical distance. It
made your life easier.
Yeah, it made the life easier. So it just kept advancing. But you were still keeping notes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when you're in the morning when you're just trying to get woke up? What happens in the afternoon when you start getting hungry? Okay. Right. What happens in the evening, when it's about quit time stuff, you start getting tired.
Yeah.
Then you get like me, I transpose numbers sometimes.
Sure.
Some people will transpose numbers.
I'm sure that's fairly common.
And that happens. So you had to keep notes in there. So then somebody, either you or somebody in the office, had to take those notes and put those in the computer. And then at the invention of data collectors, data collectors hooked up to the instrument. So you push this button, all that data went right there into that. So you were collecting all that data. So now it's cut out that era of of writing down wrong angles or wrong distances.
No more danger of transposing numbers.
No more
right?
dangers of transposing numbers.
So the GPS that you're using now, what do you see the next step being? Because I know that surveying keeps moving, it keeps advancing. So what is the next level?
Right now, you go to the seminars, the state seminars, okay?
Mhm.
Well, they have the trade shows in there too. And they're really pushing drones.
Drones.
Really pushing drones
Oh.
right now. They're getting better and better, but to have an accuracy with drones, you've got to be able to do LiDAR.
LiDAR.
And that's one time that you're looking at a 6-digit figure to do that.
Oh.
So it just really wasn't for small companies. It wasn't there. Price keeps coming down, just like GPS.
Right.
GPS was just too expensive
In the beginning of,
But this came down, just like VCRs.
They were so expensive.
They're so expensive, and then you could buy them for $50 in the store.
And now no one even uses them.
Nobody uses. That's right. Nobody uses them. So they're doing that. It's getting better and better. If you could get a unit, what happens with that? If you go over trees, it can't. You don't have LiDAR. Then it can't measure through the trees.
Right.
Okay, you got high grass, it's measured to that high grass. You're not getting down to the ground. So, but that LiDAR can penetrate that and get down to the surface and give it.
So that's really the next step.
That is the next step. And I hope that I am around surveying during that time. I enjoy what I do. I don't have no plan on quitting. Even though family says you need to start enjoying life. I enjoy surveying. That's what I enjoy. But to where I can do that, where I can survey using drones.
Randy, can you tell our listeners where they can find you online, the number to your business, the name of your business, and so forth?
Okay. Well, my company is Compton Surveying. I've been in business since 1983, located there in Chickamauga at 104 Crittenden Avenue, right across from City Hall. Have a website that Catherine designed, just beautiful job designing it. It's ComptonSurveying.com. You can look us up on that to find us. Our phone number to call is 706-375-3153. Don't always answer because somebody is researching, all right? And sometimes their faculties got to send them to the restroom. They don't always answer. We may not get back to your message that day, but we will get back and give you a call back.
Thank you, Randy. All right. So I want to thank all of our listeners for watching Chat with Kat today. And I want to thank Randy Compton for coming on with me today and discussing with us surveying. Thank you.
You're welcome.